I'm Robyn Ward, CEO of FounderForward, which is a boutique leadership development agency out of Los Angeles. I've spent 20 plus years in the tech startup space. I've been an operator, a venture capitalist, and now I'm really focused and passionate about helping folks scale themselves along their businesses. And I work mostly with early stage, high growth, venture-backed technology businesses. At a high level, I think that great leaders are folks that understand that it's not actually really about them and that it's about the people they're leading and that they're in service of. But if you're asking for specific qualities, I will say that, there's lots of qualities that make for great leaders, but there are a few that I have noticed over my 20-something years working with hundreds of leaders, particularly in a high growth business, that are extremely important. The first is growth mindset. Something I always say is great leaders are great learners. Grit, which is, if you've read the Angela Duckworth book, if not, worth reading, but it's passion meets perseverance, and resilience is sort of in that one. Emotional intelligence is a big one, which is sort of a newer one. I would say in the last decade has really risen to prominence. That's self-awareness, self-regulation, social awareness, social regulation, empathy, and inspiration are in there. So that covers a lot. Communication, being a great communicator. Individuals do not build companies, teams do. And so at the core construct is communication so that you can build a high-performing team and execute. And then the last one is humility. This is, really from Stephen Collins' Good to Great, where he's done a lot of research on it. But what I find is, particularly in a startup, you've got to be okay knowing that you don't know everything. And the key to a good leader is not to have all the answers, but to be able to hire the right team and set up an environment and ask great questions and co-create the best path forward. So those would probably be my standout qualities. So, it's definitely tricky, communication and EQ in a world where we're on Zoom and we're not in person, because a great deal of communication actually comes down to body language and tone, and a lot's happening on Slack. So I would say the key is to make sure all crucial conversations are actually happening on video, because reading people's facial expressions and seeing their eyeballs is very important. Lots of conversations going wrong by a quick Slack channel or email, even text, right? So those should be Zoom or video first, your video service of preference, or a phone call. But I would say this, it's really easy when you're even on a Zoom to be distracted, to be looking at something else, or also be in your email. And this is the same thing, a corollary to when we were meeting in a room and people would have their phones or their computers open. The key to communication is presence. It's focus. It's allowing and enabling people to feel heard, not just listen to, and to not jump in with your thought, but allow them to finish, and be an empathetic and appreciative listener, and then be in a co-creative conversation. And so I would say that what's happening is we're getting a little lazy, and we have all of these things that we're doing while we're in conversation, and we need to just really put those things aside and focus on the conversation or the meeting that we're having. Building a reflective practice into your schedule and life is one of the most high leverage activities that you can do for learning, growth, and operating at peak performance. And the key is, we don't just learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience. But we're all building companies and leading people and have families, and we're on autopilot, and we're always moving forward. And it's very rare that we take the time to look back, which is going to actually help us move forward in faster and better ways. So in terms of building those in, I like to work with data and science, and I work with product folks and engineers. So I will say that there's a study, 10 days, 2 groups. One group spends 15 minutes a day at the end of the day reflecting, and one doesn't. 23% improvement in performance in 10 days. I can't think of something else that gives you that kind of performance improvement. So when I do that, most of my leaders do, whoa, oh my goodness, how are we not doing this? So listen, Every day might be a little bit much for people, but the founders that I work with and the way I do it, 60 to 90 minutes at the end of the day on Friday, that's when all the fire drills have mostly ended and the days are dying down. The key is you got to reflect both on your company or your team and on yourself. But for me personally, I do Fridays, I do end of month, I do end of quarter, and I do end of year. So one of the things I do right now with all my clients is I have a reflection worksheet, and it's gotten sent out to everybody because I want everybody to have it done by December 1st, because I don't want you to move into planning for 2021 until you've actually looked backwards, right? So a lot of people sort of miss that component, which is super important. High-performing leaders have a mindfulness practice. And that doesn't necessarily mean meditation, though I would love everybody that rolls their eyes to revisit meditation because now there's helpful technology, but the data on it is next level on terms of how it makes you a better leader. But if that's not for you, breath work, body scan, there's other ways to develop a mindfulness practice, but being a present and conscious leader sets you apart. The second one that I think is really important, particularly for high growth businesses, and honestly, every business in today's day and age has a degree of uncertainty and is high growth. So, this is not just for startups, but businesses and particularly leadership, there's an element of an emotional roller coaster, right? And so how do you develop your emotional intelligence? And I don't see a lot of leaders totally understanding the data, which is EQ can be 2 times as important no matter what the job role in terms of success as IQ. And so what that requires is people hitting the mental and emotional gym as much as they might be hitting the physical gym. And that's things like journaling, making sure that you send yourself a text at the end of the day that is like an emoji that lets you know how you were feeling that day. So you're being conscious of like the energy that you were bringing into the office, mantras and reframes for when your mind might flow to the negative. All of that is part of mental and emotional fitness. And I think that those are big practices and big distinguishers from sort of the excellent leaders and the good leaders. As a leader is to constantly ask for feedback. The idea of building a learning organization and an organization where you don't have a lot of defensiveness or people aren't worried about getting feedback. The issue is that feedback has gotten this bad rep as this negative thing. You want to build it into an organization so it's a positive thing and it's learning, because we're all trying to grow and learn. We're trying to grow and learn the company, and we're trying to grow and learn as individuals. So the more you as a leader end conversations with, what can I do more of, less of, better of, or different, or follow up a meeting and send a note and say, hey, that was, a great presentation. How can I help you in your initiative? What can I do to remove obstacles for you? So constantly asking that, and then it also tees it up so that people are comfortable receiving that from you. And, when you establish that caring and trust, the crucial conversations you can have and the honesty that you can have and the transparency that you can have in an organization just ultimately reaches a different level. I wake up and I make my bed, right? And when I make my bed, I actually say out loud, win the morning, win the day. There's a lot of science around just getting that first accomplishment in and feeling good about it and taking that energy into the day. Then I make my protein shake and I sit down and I journal some things. I journal my mantras in the morning, which are very important to me. Or I journal my big 3 rocks. I write what will make today great and I fill it in. I do all of that before I meditate, because if I meditate before, my whole meditation is just planning my day. So I have to get all of that out and then I meditate. If my schedule allows, I work out and then I shower and I'm ready to start my day. My big thing is, it's your job as a leader to walk into the office, which we may not do anymore, get on your Zoom, as creative, productive, happy, energized as possible. And to do that, you need to take time to set yourself up for positivity and optimism in your day. What you do not need to do is wake up and check your email, because you are automatically on defense and your day has been taken from you. Now, here's the big trick. I have a tool that I call the peak performance recipe that actually helps clients write this stuff down because it helps them keep accountability with themselves, improves their chances of doing it. But I say it's just like Google's OKRs, right? You may only hit 70% and you're okay with that. The idea is to be intentional and to sort of average out following your peak performance recipe, but nobody's going to hit that recipe every day. What we don't have is extra brain space to beat ourselves up. So we have to be okay with that and know that we can, you know, get back and do a better job the next day. The thing that's wild about imposter syndrome is that when we have it, we feel like we're the only one with it, but actually 70% of people have imposter syndrome. The real wild thing is the people that Netflix and chill, they don't have imposter syndrome. It's the actual type A's, high achievers that actually have it, which is sort of counterintuitive. And then there's a higher percentage in women and people of color and what we would call underestimated or underrepresented, which makes sense because we're not seeing each other as much out there. This is why see her, be her, see it, be it is so important. This is why Kamala Harris as a vice president is so important for so many reasons. But I do know that the more you can see yourself sitting around a table or a room or being a leader, that it is helpful. It's not going to per se make it go away because we have our own self-talk that we have to manage. But, you know, I think we're moving in the right direction, that at least at some point there might not be a higher percentage that exists in certain populations and that it's just more flat across the board. I think that imposter syndrome really comes down to self-talk. And there's a lot of exercises, one of which is like a racket and a reframe. And it has to do with being mindful so you can catch yourself in the moment where you're telling yourself the fake movie that you're running about why you're not the right leader for this company or why you can't do X, Y, Z. And then replacing that thought with a positive one. And there's just a lot of data and science around that now that we really understand the plasticity of the brain, which is you are reprogramming your mind. And imposter syndrome can be so prevalent that you need to reprogram your mind around it. But the key first is to actually have the awareness of the thoughts. And that goes back to some of the mindfulness exercises. Focus on EQ as much as IQ. In some instances, I would say focus on it even more. I mean, you know, to be founding a company, there's some degree of table stakes that you're a smart person and that you're a hustler. What's not table stakes is that you know how to manage your mind and your emotions and work with other people to build a long-term viable business.